What's going on, everybody? Welcome to FLX Weekly. I'm Josh Durso in for Jim Seneca. We have got an exciting show lined up for you today. In a few minutes, I'll be joined by the Between the Lakes Community Service Players to talk about their upcoming production of the Addams Family. But first, we need to talk about today's show sponsors. This episode of FLX Weekly is brought to you by Lincoln Hill Farms. Quench your thirst for a good time on Saturday, August 5th at Brewfest 2023, bringing together craft beer, live music, local artisans, vendors, and one-of-a-kind experience. To learn more, visit LincolnHillFarms.com. And also, Seneca Falls Acupuncture. Gorgeous skin is rooted in good health and internal balance. Tap into the power of cosmetic acupuncture to maintain beautiful, healthy skin no matter your age. Learn more and book online at SenecaFallsAcupuncture.com. And with that out of the way, we get to the good part of the show. The players and the director are here. So, Tina, before we get into what we are talking about today, introduce yourself.
My name is Tina Bauder, and I am a teacher at South Seneca Middle School and a theater director there. And I've been directing the Between the Lakes Community Service Players since we started the group 19 years ago.
Long time.
Yeah, a long time.
And next up would be Jarrett Pratt. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm staff at the elementary school in South Seneca and Interlaken. I'm playing Gomez for the show, and I'm also the technical director.
And finally, we've got Julia Rogers. Julia?
Yes, I am Julia Rogers, and I am Morticia. And I am working currently at Yale Manor in Romulus, New York, which is a very nice place.
Very cool. Okay, so let's get into the production this weekend. Addams Family, how was it chosen? What was that process like? And when did it happen? Like, how far in advance is that decision being made? What direction you're going?
So kind of funny backstory with this one. It was actually chosen as the musical for the South Seneca High School production in 2020, but you know what happened then. And the week of production, we just closed the door on that Monday, and everything sat in the auditorium for a good year, actually, to be honest, for at least 9 months, because we couldn't get back in, or because of all kinds of things. So when we finally did put everything away, a lot of the same people that I get to work with in the summer productions are also my production team during my school production. So thinking about what do we do this summer, we knew we had everything ready. We had sets built, we had pieces, we had costuming, we had the whole thing. So it was kind of a no-brainer to say, let's do it. Let's give a little tribute to the class of 2020, who was a huge part of what would have been the school production. In fact, Julia was in that cast and was playing Morticia in that production. And I, as I just was reminded, called her the day of auditions for this production and said, "You are coming, right?"
So, Julia, that's actually a great jumping off point. What's that feeling like? Having had been almost there, it was going to happen, 2-year pause and change, and here we are again. A little bit like putting on an old pair of shoes that you were really comfortable in?
Yeah, it took a lot less work for me to get my lines. I remembered it pretty well. But it's weird having an entirely different cast and me being like, it wasn't like that before.
Yeah.
But it is good doing this show again and actually being able to perform it. So, yeah.
Bits and pieces, like I'm curious how much of it is kind of like copy paste. How much of the production maybe changed or was tweaked a little bit based on, I guess, circumstance over the last 2 years?
Well, and actors, to be quite honest, they're very different, and I'm the kind of director that takes the person that I'm working with and creates a character with them, so they are different. In that, they're different, but they're the Addams Family,
Right.
So you work within these parameters to create your Addams Family. But they're pretty iconic characters. That whole process, there are some things that are the same. Some of the dances, some of the some of that might be the same. Certainly it's different because it's a whole different synergy. It's a whole different energy. We have people from all across the county in this production. Before it was our high school students, and now it's we have students. We have as young as 8 years old in the production, as old as, I won't say that age out loud. She'll get mad at me. But we have people who have been retired quite a long time, let's put it that way. So we have a we've always had, for all of our years of our summer productions, a mix of ages and just different backgrounds of people. So it's pretty amazing. So pulling that together was different, but it was a little easier because it wasn't, usually my rule is I will not repeat a show, whether it's school or community, within 8 years, because it just gives that time to, you know, put the other one to rest, and we, you know, gives the, you know, the community some time to go, oh yeah, I remember that, but this is a new one. So this was different for me too, as a director, coming in and thinking it through. There were a lot of things that I had already thought through that came back very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And there were things that we definitely changed just to shape it around the people we were working with this time around.
Addams Family, was this a production that the community had put on before, or was this a first time, or going to be a first time in 2020, and now will actually be a first time?
For us, yes.
Okay.
It was a first time for the south end of Seneca County for school group, our school group,
Mm-hmm.
and it is the first time for our Between the Lakes group putting it on. It's been done a lot. I will say that, you know, the Netflix series of Wednesday has really kind of made it come out quite a bit. I've seen it across many school districts and community groups over the past, you know, 4 or 5 years. But this is our version, and I think it's pretty special.
How hard is it creatively, and I guess I'd like to also hear from the actors on this one, how hard is it creatively to try and, not whether intentionally or unintentionally, subconsciously, to kind of mimic some of those things if you've consumed the newer Netflix series, or if you've watched the television series from the 60s or 70s, whatever it was? How hard is it to kind of make sure you're like creating your own lane and not necessarily just kind of recreating something that's already been done?
Well, Tina has actually encouraged a lot of us to actually get inspiration from previous portrayals of all the characters. A lot of the aspects of the stage version of Gomez for this is different just in how it's written than any of the portrayals in like the 90s movies or in the old TV show. I have this ridiculous Latin accent for the entire show, and it's written in like the way his words are written, the way he speaks, and you don't really see that in any of the other like video interpretations.
Gotcha.
But you can, I believe you can get some of that in the way his words are written in the old cartoons, like the old comic strips. Yeah. It's interesting. But you listen to some of the other stage performances, like the original Broadway cast, Nathan Lane was Gomez, and he's so animated.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating to listen to and endlessly entertaining without even seeing him portray the part. But you take some of those pieces and mix it together, and you do your own thing, but you gotta have fun with it and like pay homage to the other people who have done it too.
And Julia, for you probably had something in mind a few years ago in terms of what you wanted to do with the character. Now you've grown as a person, as an actor. Where do you then, or how did you draw your inspiration to create what you've created for this particular production?
I'm mainly going off of what I did before because it's still in me. I'm just going off of that and the original show, of course, because I don't know, that's my favorite version. I'm just trying to be that elegant, very subtle Morticia with a few smiles, as Miss Bauder says.
Occasional smiles. And from a directing standpoint, how do you approach that? Obviously, he's very hands-on, but I would also assume that there's kind of probably a little creative freedom to try and let them go where they're going to go.
Absolutely, especially with certain characters. I mean, I've chatted with all the characters quite a bit about who they want it to be, even their voices, the sounds of the way they deliver. You know, Uncle Fester is, you know, in various creations of this story has been very different.
Yeah.
And I kind of let them settle into the one that's their favorite, the one that they see in their head when they see it too. That's important, from, you know, Grandma to Fester to Lurch, which, you know, we kind of I've let them be eclectic, yet they have created their own, their own storyline of that person, of that character. And I like that creative process. I like to let people have those choices. Sometimes it's a little harder when they're younger. The younger cast members don't have a sense of that history of the Addams Family, or they were just used to seeing, the movies, and I forced them all to watch something a little different. Even some of them have gone back to watch some of the cartoons and been like, wow, that's kind of creepy weird, But that was Charles Addams.
Yeah.
And his art, the art cartoons that came out in the 30s.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing how iconic it is and how far it's come in terms of that growth and how people shifted a little bit. I would not say that the new Netflix series has influenced us much at all.
Mm-hmm.
I would say most of us in the group have stuck with them. Wednesday is very Wednesday through all of them. Whether she's portrayed as an 8-year-old
Mm-hmm.
or as an 18-year-old, which she is in this show. There's some things, just like Morticia, it's pretty tried and true. There are elements of that are just there caricature-wise. There's these pieces that's why they're cartoons, right? And
Yeah.
that are definitely coming through, and I think everybody will really enjoy those pieces, or what they remember, whether they grew up watching the movies that came much later for me. I don't even know until I started doing this, I never watched one of them.
Yeah.
It was really always the black and white television series, the 30-minute clips that you got, the wacky, fun stuff. So, but I think everybody's taking a little piece of all of that, each of those.
It seems like when I think back of all of the Addams Family related content I've consumed over 30 plus years of life, it's kind of this mixed bag of like dark, light, slapstick comedy, kind of like all over the board. Where does this land in that spectrum of like dark, light? Probably not as dark as some of the stuff that was very early, but is there kind of like you try to get the production into the middle, or are you leaning into more one side or the other, or?
Well, there's a lot of jokes. It's very funny. There's a lot of innuendo in this show that will go right over the heads of the younger kids. We are very much focused as a family-focused production. People asked me just recently, is it okay for the kids? I'm like, they'll love it. They won't get creeped out. I mean, there's dead ancestors. I've got 12, 15 of them walking around, because the whole premise of the show is that the ancestors come out one night a year to celebrate what it is to be an Addams, and then they go back in their crypt and we're done. Well, Uncle Fester doesn't let them back in until they help Wednesday be able to marry her true love. So I have these dead people wandering around, zombies. Everybody loves a good zombie, right? So we have that element, but they're not creepy to the point where they're going to freak out the audience. They're not in people's faces. So we kind of take it back and forth a little bit. They're more fun loving,
Mm-hmm.
which is what the Addams Family is. Even though you have this hand that comes out and is disembodied and waving around, somehow people love it. It's not too creepy. It's that kooky side
Mm-hmm.
of creepy, not the blood running and any of
Right.
that kind of creepy. There's some grandmama's really kind of out there. She's making potions and doing her thing and having fun, and of course Pugsley's blowing things up. But it's funny how our culture has just absorbed that. It's cool. It's fun. It lets us experience that side that we don't necessarily practice, but we can appreciate as people who are viewers, and live vicariously a little bit through some of those fun, kooky characters.
There is still some of the darker edge to it in places. Gomez has like his collection of torture implements and weapons and things in his grotto, and then there's the like torture chamber rack that Wednesday puts Pugsley in and to give him a little stretch. Things like that.
But they're all in good fun.
Right.
Yeah, the show's not purposely trying to be creepy. It's just portraying what's normal for the Addams.
Right.
So it comes off normal, but we are creepy.
We got the why out of you, Julia, is why you wanted to do this particular show. Jared, when you knew this was going to be the production, prior to auditions, what made you say, I want to be involved in this?
I just like doing theater. And it's so convenient to have an option so close to home.
Mm-hmm.
Down in the south end of the county, there's not a lot going on, a lot of farming.
Yeah.
But Between the Lakes only does a show every other year, but
Yeah.
we've had a long gap since our last one. Our last real show was Godspell in 2017. And we've had a long break, and
Yeah.
it's so good to be back in doing a show. In 2020, I was involved in the high school show. Tina had collected a bunch of talented adult vocalists, and we were sitting in the pit as additional voices,
Mhm.
just to help out with some of the harmonies and stuff while everybody's panting and wheezing while they're dancing around on the stage. And it was a real letdown that we didn't get to put that on. But knowing that this was in the back of all of our heads for the past few years, finally getting the opportunity to bring everything out and add to it, adjust it, change it, and make it our own and get out there, it was awesome. I didn't go into auditions with any expectations. I rarely seek out a specific part,
Mhm.
but I kind of fell into the Gomez role during like line readings because I was the only guy there for the first day of auditions and really started to get into it.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun right from the top.
When it comes to, you talked about gaps between productions.
Mhm.
When it comes to keeping that tool, because what you're talking about, acting, the creative portion of that, that is a tool that you have at your disposal. How on earth do you keep that sharp? If you are only doing a production maybe once a year or maybe once every couple of years or whatever the case may be, is it just a natural gift, or is it something that there occasionally you have to do something creative to kind of like scratch that itch, but also keep the skill kind of like there?
For me, I'm a colossal nerd, both colossal and a nerd. I have a bunch of friends who get together every week for a Dungeons and Dragons game, and there's a lot of acting around that table, and that's something fun you can do to help keep some of those ideas going through your head, some of those actions and feelings and things like that. I'm also involved in the middle high school drama club and help out there, mostly on the tech side.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Tina dragged me up on stage for a play a couple years ago because she didn't have somebody to be an adult part. Kind of last minute. That was fun.
She does that.
And
Yeah.
Julia, what about you? How do you find yourself either scratching that itch to fill the creative void in between productions, or just keep the skills where they need to be so that you can do productions like this one?
Well, pretty much I am listening to Broadway shows all the time and just blasting them in my car wherever I'm driving. And also it just kicks in when I'm back in there, just getting back in the groove.
It's like riding a bicycle. Never forget it.
Very much, yeah.
20, how many years have you been involved, Tina,
With this group?
with this
We
group?
started it in 2004.
Biggest thing that's changed since 2004, since you got involved? What is the thing that maybe has changed the most in that amount of time?
About theater or about
About
this
theater,
group?
theater in general, this type of theater in general.
I would say I got older.
Aside from that, because we're all doing that every single day.
I know, sorry. But it does make a difference. You know, I think, well, it's been interesting because in these almost 20 years, I've also, I've been teaching for 30 years, so I have this theater collection of people that I get the pleasure and joy of working with since they're about 11 years old. Jared being one of them, Julia being one of them. There's a lot of people that have come to the community theater aspect from my school theater program, and family members, parents, relatives. I mean, we've had the whole gamut. And I had a new a new tech guy working with us this year who's doing our sound, Tim Hoster, great guy working with him, and he looked at me one night and he said, "How do you get all them? How'd you get them all? Because this is pretty amazing." And there's 24 of them singing, dancing, great actors on that stage. And I stopped and I just looked at him like, and I started pointing. Well, I've taught that one since 7th grade, this one's mom of this person. They're all people that they're collectively have done theater with me or wanted to. And if you can't do the school show because you're not in school, well, what better way to do theater than to just join us for the summer, right? So I think the biggest change really is all of us have grown up in it together. You know, playing parts when you're a child versus playing parts when you're an adult. And I'll be honest, it's a joy and a pleasure for me to watch them grow up and grow into these. And trust me, it's in the back of my head when I choose productions. Who's out there? Who we've worked with in the past? Who we might be able to work with? We have our own little pocket of that in Ovid area. That I hope that other people start to see. I think they have. I mean, we've done some major productions, and people have come, and every time people go, "You had no idea you were here." Well, now you do, and here we are. Growing that is a change. I think the other theater has changed a bit. The same way that Broadway faces that whole conundrum of what do we do? Something new and fresh, or something that's Rogers and Hammerstein. What do you? That has been something we've struggled with too. A lot of times that comes out of minds sitting around tossing out ideas, and it grows from we don't know what we're going to do to all of a sudden, holy cow, let's do this one. And that kind of evolution is part of that. That's the part that I love the most, the creative aspect, working with all of these, whether they're, Jared told you, he's also my tech director. Every person who's on my tech crew, my production team, is also in the show because they finally get to play too in the summer. They don't get to do that very often. So, I have a business manager who is playing grandma, and I have, my costumer is playing one of the ancestors, and I have this group of people that are just, it's evolved. That's changed. That evolution of those people have changed more in the last few years to be quite, I'm so grateful for this production team that I have. None of it could happen with any one of them missing in it. So that has evolved as well in 20 years.
Is it kind of and all three of you, please feel free to jump in on this one. Does it feel a little bit maybe inspiring and also surprising that a small rural community between two lakes in this region is able to pull together consistently a large enough collection of folks who are willing to participate in this, and then to see the community response to it afterward? Does that maybe feed the flame a little bit to maybe the next time the opportunity comes back around to say, yeah, I want to do that again?
I don't think it's all that surprising, honestly, because I think back to my very first show in middle school. We did Lil Abner when I was in 7th grade, and so many talented people.
Yeah.
And I've seen it year after year growing up to where I am now, 36. And there are so many talented people in our region. There's so many talented people everywhere. And just because you live in the middle of nowhere doesn't mean there's any lack of that. But
I think
you give people the opportunity, and they show up.
That's exactly it. It's providing the opportunity. And there are some times that the director gets more nervous about these things, I think, sometimes than the actors realize. When you're sitting there at auditions and you're going, oh, please let them show up, right?
Yeah.
And then they do. They rarely have let me down, ever, in all these years. And if there's ever a year that we can't do a show for whatever reason, or it's time to just take the summer off, because that's a real thing too every once in a while. We've done concerts, and on the off chance we don't do a concert or a show, we then produce a week-long theater camp for kids. So we're always doing something, other than the COVID year.
Mm-hmm.
We're always doing something, and our whole group, it's got a different twist. There's so much talent, and the whole reason we started this group almost 20 years ago is because there's this talent, but there's also this group of people, and it's grown and evolved, that they do it for the love of theater, but we also do it to then give back to the community. That's what makes us a little bit different, our theater group, than others.
Yeah.
So that we all, we like it when we can wrap around a partner, and everybody likes to say, oh wow, we're doing this for Pathway Homes of the Finger Lakes, or we're doing this for the Literacy Initiative in Seneca County, and that's a really cool thing to be able to do. This year we don't have a partner up front, but we'll be making donations of our proceeds to various non-for-profit organizations in the Finger Lakes, and there's that element too. Some people have actually come to audition just because of who we're supporting, and there's that element. But for the most part, I would say, people who want to do theater beyond high school.
Yeah.
If you don't have a community group, then you don't get that chance, or you have to travel further for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's always been there. I started doing the summer shows in like 2nd grade, and I wasn't living in Ovid or anything. I was in Romulus and whatnot. And I grew up doing the shows every year until I came to the school, and then I did the school shows, the high school shows, every year. And it's always been like a second family, almost like a first family to me, more than my real one. But yeah.
It's a real community.
Yeah.
This weekend, give us the 411 on how to attend, when the shows are, and if there's still time to get into gear, and if this is the first time you're hearing about this, to get down there and see it at the South Seneca Auditorium, correct?
Yeah, at the South Seneca High School Auditorium in Ovid. The shows Friday and Saturday are at 7:30, and Sunday at 2. So we have a matinee for the younger crowd or older crowd, whichever one you like to fit into. So 3 performances, and you can get tickets at the door. We are also very much about wanting families to be able to access theater. It's one of our missions. And because this year we're actually working in partnership with the South Seneca Falcon Players, since we actually picked up the Addams Family where they left it, so to speak, we actually are offering free tickets to South Seneca students. So as long as they have at least one adult paying to get in and be with them during the show, South Seneca students get in for free. Everybody else, the general admission is only $12, which is pretty amazing. We have a grant through the Delavan Foundation that allows us to do this, and I'm very, very grateful to the Delavan Foundation for this opportunity. Not only just to be able to do a show, but to the other side of it. The flip side is to be able to allow people to get to see quality theater in where they live. And so our tickets are $12 for general admission, $10 for students and senior citizens. It's such a deal, to be quite honest, compared to a lot of what you're going to. If you go to theater anywhere else, community theater or professional theater, you're paying a lot more than that. And I'll be honest, I know I'm a little biased, but our production is pretty darn great. So the quality of theater is up there with stuff that you're seeing in other levels. So it's well worth the trip to Ovid. It's not really that far. People think south of 336 is the, different split there, but make your way down there because you won't want to miss the Addams Family with us this weekend, and tickets are available at the door.
It's a 15-minute drive. People, there's no excuse. Friday, Saturday,
And
Sunday.
It's air conditioned.
And it's
Not
air
to
conditioned.
mention it's
That's
air
another plus, too.
Very much.
All right. Best of luck to all 3 of you and the rest of the cast, of course. Thanks for coming in today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
That is going to do it for this edition of FLX Weekly. Click like, share, and subscribe. Jim will be back in this seat next week. Until then, have a great summer weekend here in the Finger Lakes.